All right, SCMP students, welcome. Today, we are going to tackle a topic that is absolutely critical for your exams. We're talking transfer pricing. Let's break this thing down, make it super simple so you can walk into that exam and just crush any question they throw at you.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with a really fundamental question. How does a company sell to itself? I mean, how do you sell a product from one part of your own company to another? It sounds kind of straightforward, right? But believe me, setting that internal price, what we call the transfer price, has massive consequences. We're talking performance, motivation, and yeah, the bottom line profit.
So, to make this crystal clear, let's bring it to life with a little case study. Let's meet Innovate Electronics. Now, Innovate has two key divisions. You've got Division A, we'll call them chip fab. These are the folks making the powerful processors, the brains of the operation. And then you've got Division B, device tech. They're the ones assembling and selling the final tablets to customers. So here's the big question. What price should chip fab charge device tech for those processors?
So our first potential solution here is probably the one that makes the most sense right off the bat. It's often the most preferred, too. It's called the market-based approach. I want you to think of this as the outside-in method. Basically, we're going to look to the outside world, to the open market, to solve our internal pricing problem.
So what exactly is a market-based transfer price? Well, the logic is actually pretty simple. You go out and you find the price for a similar product on the open market. But you don't stop there. You've got to adjust it. Think about it. You subtract all the costs you save by selling it internally. You know, things like shipping, marketing, fancy packaging. All that stuff goes away. And whatever's left, that's your transfer price.
Let's plug this right back into our case study. So, the manager over at Chip Fab, she goes out and researches the going rate for a similar processor on the open market. Then, she sits down and calculates all the money they're saving. No shipping costs to a random customer, no big sales campaign for this one batch. She adds all those savings up, subtracts them from the market price, and there you have it. That is the price they charge their colleagues over at Device Tech.
Okay, time to switch gears. Let's put on our examiner's hat for a second. Because for SCMP, just knowing how to calculate the price, that's not going to be enough for top marks. Not even close. You have to be able to critically evaluate it. And that means you need to know the good, the bad, and maybe most importantly, the impact it has on people's behavior. This right here, this is your exam toolkit. So, on the plus side, what's great about the market price? Well, it's unbiased, right? It's set by supply and demand. It's objective. It's really hard for one manager to try and game the system. But, and this is a big but for getting full marks, you have to talk about the disadvantages. You have to argue about things like, what if the market is all wacky because of a distress sale? Or what if the prices are just jumping all over the place? And here's the real killer point you have to mention. What do you do if there's no external market for your part at all?
Now, I want you to really lock in on this idea because it's the core insight here. This whole process, it's not just about finding a number. When you use a market price, what you're really doing is injecting a dose of real-world competition right into the heart of your own company. It basically forces your internal divisions, like Chip Fab, to be just as lean and efficient as any outside supplier.
And this is where you see those behavioral consequences play out. Chip Fab suddenly knows, hey, we have to be cost competitive. And Device Tech over there, they know they have options, they have bargaining power. It really motivates both sides to step up their game. But listen up, here is the crucial, critical comment for your exam analysis. You have to talk about quality. Sure, an external part might be cheaper, but the in-house part from Chip Fab, it might be perfectly custom fit for Device Tech's tablet. Buying an external part might mean a bunch of costly modifications. Mentioning that, that's a top-level comment right there.
So, look, the market-based approach is awesome when there's actually a market. But what happens when that's not the case? What if Chip Fab develops some brand new, totally unique custom processor that has no equivalent out there in the world? What do you do then? Well, that brings us right to our second solution.
Yeah, when you're dealing with something super specialized, what we call an intermediate good, something that's only made for internal use, you just can't look outside for a price. It doesn't exist. All of the value is being created inside the company's walls. So it stands to reason that our pricing method has to reflect that internal value creation, right?
And that method is called the shared profit relative to cost method. It sounds complicated, but the logic is actually pretty straightforward. The basic idea is that the amount of cost a division racks up is a stand-in, a proxy, for how much value it added. So what we do is we take the final profit from selling the tablet and we share it, we allocate it between Chip Fab and Device Tech. And how do we decide who gets what? It's based on the proportion of the total cost that each division was responsible for.
Now, the primary advantage here, the big selling point, is all about fairness. When you don't have an external benchmark to rely on, this method does a pretty good job of rewarding each division for what it actually contributed. Simple, right? The more value you add, which we're measuring by cost, the bigger your slice of the profit pie. But, and you have to be aware of this risk for your exam, this can create a really dangerous incentive for divisions to let their costs creep up or even inflate them just to get a bigger share of the profit. That's a key critical comment you need to have in your back pocket.
Okay, so we've covered our 2 key methods. Now, let's bring it all home. We're going to do a quick recap and give you a super clear framework for deciding which method to use when you're faced with a case study in your exam. Because at the end of the day, it's all about making the right strategic choice.
And this table makes it so simple. Think of this as your decision-making cheat sheet. When you're in the exam, you ask yourself one question. Is there a competitive external market for a similar product? If the answer is yes, you argue for the market-based method. If the product is totally unique with no external market in sight, then your go-to is the shared profit method. It really is that straightforward.
And for that last-minute revision, right before you walk into the exam hall, here is your formula flash. You don't need to memorize complex formulas, just remember the core logic. For market-based, it's simple. Market price minus saved costs. That's it. For shared profit, just remember, profit allocation follows cost contribution. Lock those 2 simple ideas in your mind.
So I'm going to leave you with one final thought to chew on. As you're working through these case studies, always ask yourself, what's the ultimate goal here? Are we trying to find a price that's just fair to the 2 managers? Or are we trying to find the price that drives the best performance for the entire company? Because the answer to that question will guide your analysis and push your answer to the highest possible level. Good luck.